Call the member for Noosa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Queenslanders rightfully are frustrated when, through no fault of their own, they pay the penalty for flawed legislation and decision-making, such as inappropriate volumes of heavy haulage from a failed permit process overwhelming their communities, damaging their roads, businesses, mental and physical health. What is even worse is that through some arcane technical aspects of legislation, departments respond they can't act and instead have no option but to continue to use taxpayer dollars to fund road repairs and upgrades just to keep road users safe. This arcane legislation includes environmental authorities that are issued, for example, to quarries without any consideration to the impacts to the surrounding communities and infrastructure. Deputy Speaker, when devastation occurs, the ability to review is constrained by outdated criteria which limits consideration to within the bounds of the property or permit that the activity occurs on. Hence, our environmental regulator has no ability to rectify an environmental authority that was flawed from the start or was issued prior to current standards and expectations. Other states are not so constrained in this way. As well, except in Queensland and WA, ministers at any time can call for a review of environmental authorities. We have neither in Queensland. The government is in the process of creating an independent Environmental Protection Agency, or IEPA, something that has been desperately needed and in which I have sought since encountering our lack of powers to fix our failings. Of note, Victoria has had this since 1971, which has led to greater resolutions for communities, including reducing pollution in the Melbourne Yarra River. Deputy Speaker, it appears the department has interpreted this need narrowly, releasing a discussion paper on this proposed IEPA that indicates changes to governance arrangements and literally no other changes, nor any solid and reassuring powers to actually be able to act. Yes, that word, for without it, it is, as they term, a toothless tiger making sounds yet no bite. Fortunately for Queensland, in the development phase of its own IEPA, there are those that have gone before us, including Victoria, who has just undertaken an independent, comprehensive review of their own EPA. This focused on three elements that are essential for an effective independent EPA that actually can resolve the impacts to our environment and inhabitants, including people. The first was, what should the EPA be doing? I actually love this recommendation. It said it should place a high priority on public health and safety, addressing environmental problems and market failures whilst promoting other social objectives. A regulator that is proactive and acts strategically in identifying and mitigating environmental risks, always mindful of the community's social and economic objectives and the need to minimise the red tape. Secondly, they asked how the EPA should work to meet this objective. The review emphasised taking a strategic view, including the approach to land use planning, the sites on which people live and work, the land and air around them, the corridors they travel on. Yes, that's the roads I have spoken about so many times in relation to the devastation through our Noosa villages. The EPA has to have a role in all of this. Thirdly, giving the EPA the tools to do the job, which, as we have seen many times in our inquiries, whether it be with QCAT or other statutory bodies such as the Ombudsman, includes appropriate funding resources for better prevention, managing of risks and holding government to account. They also recommend working closely with local government, including having local EPA officers embedded in councils, which would ensure that when permits are issued for major activities, all impacts are considered, including to our roads, such as agencies such as TMR will be referred to, which may have prevented the devastation to our infrastructure in Noosa. From this, we can see what we should demand and expect from our new IEPA for Queensland, and nothing less. It must be independent. It must have the goal of mitigating environmental risks, as well impacts to communities, their residents and infrastructure. It must encompass social and economic objectives and mental and physical well-being of our communities. It must have a broad scope to achieve this objective, including land use planning, working with local government and advising state government. And it must have the tools it needs, including the funding and power to vary environmental authorities, including retrospectively. Anything less is irresponsible, and it's a waste of current efforts to set something up. Thank you.
Speaker. Call the member for Thurangara.